reaffirmed the ANC's central role in the government of national unity, denounced acts of ill-discipline and criminality, and update the nation on internal renewal processes ahead of the forthcoming National General Council of the African National Congress. The national dialogue, in our understanding, is not a once-off event nor an ANC-driven program. And the convention that took place in couple of weeks ago at the University of Pretoria, University of South Africa, we have understood that as a convention that sets the tone in terms of what must happen with regard to the dialogue, but not the dialogue itself. It is a citizen-led process designed to build a new social compact in line with the aspirations of the people and rooted firmly in the ideals of the Freedom Charter. The Reset National Convention served as a foundation, established a steering committee tasked with ensuring that the dialogue reaches every corner of society in the wards, communities, civil society, labor, business, youth, and traditional leaders. Guided by its traditions of dialogue, consensus building, and unity in action, the ANC welcomes this people-driven initiative. The dialogue is a concrete expression of the Freedom Charter's declaration that, I quote, "the people shall govern," close quote, reinforcing the democratic ethos of our nation more than 30 years into freedom. It provides an inclusive platform to break structural bottlenecks that have hindered transformation and development. Attempts to mischaracterize the dialogue as an ANC public relations exercise are rejected with the contempt it deserves. The ANC is committed to organizational renewal, societal renewal, and advancing the resolutions of the 54th and 55th national conferences, which emphasizes the renewal of the movement and the participatory governance. We call on all South Africans, especially workers, the unemployed, women, youth, and the economically excluded, to participate actively in shaping a future South Africa they wish to inherit. We were encouraged as participants, of which we sent 5 delegates to the convention, to see such enthusiasm and a great spirit of camaraderie among South Africans across all walks of life, political divide, and citizenry and notable personalities in our society grappling with difficult issues that face our nation and shaping the agenda of what South Africa should be about and what we should be seized with as a nation. The ANC is deeply concerned about the rise of gangsterism in schools and violence in the transport sector. These challenges speak to a deeper social malaise undermining our communities. In response, the ANC calls for a national campaign to restore the soul of the nation, a mass-based movement involving parents, educators, faith-based organizations, school governing bodies, and community policing forums. This aligns with the ANC's long-standing commitment to moral regeneration and social cohesion. Parents must again become central to the learner education, reclaiming our children from the grip of crime and hopelessness. We call upon our structures, our communities, not to be onlookers to acts that humiliate teachers in the schools. We must intervene. We must engage. We must support our teachers. We must support our children, who most of the time we see that they are engaged in acts that define the collapse of social fabric of our society. We must not be onlookers. We must participate. Teachers are at the center of shaping a human resource for the country that is South Africa. The ANC condemns the senseless violence in the e-hailing and taxi industries, including the tragic murder of Mthokozisi Mvelase. We reaffirm the need for accelerated implementation of the National Land Transport Act to regulate the e-hailing transportation in our country. We support the modernization of public transport and the revitalization of PRASA, which we have seen may align interest to project a manufactured narrative of ANC decline. Our recent by-election victories strengthened branch activism and renewed grassroots confidence, and affirmed that the ANC remains the most trusted and relevant political organization in the country. The biggest challenge we face in terms of our citizenry is a decline of participation in the democratic processes of our country. The GNU is a reflection of the democratic mandate of the 2024 elections, and it is anchored in ANC-led policies and programs, including the Presidential Employment Stimulus, SRD grant, expanded school nutrition schemes, and energy reforms. The ANC remains the central and stabilizing force in the GNU. We will continue to review structural arrangements to ensure stability and sharpen the focus on service delivery. The ANC is not a spectator, it leads. We respect the will of the people, and GNU is one such defining tactical intervention that reflects the outcome of the elections in 2024. The 7th administration has continued to advance the apex priorities of growing the economy, creating jobs, fighting poverty, reducing. Important strides have been made in implementing programs aimed at waging the war on poverty and providing meaningful relief to the daily lives of South Africans. We reiterate that local government remains a critical sphere of governance, as enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic. In this regard, the ANC welcomes the recent changes in local government leadership in some of our provinces. This action reaffirms our commitment to ensuring that service delivery is not undermined or sabotaged in any form. We call on all councillors to desist from acting outside the collective decisions of the ANC, which are aimed at strengthening stability in municipalities and transforming the lives of our people. Flowing from these apex priorities, the ANC is working tirelessly to ensure that service delivery is accelerated and strengthened across all levels of the state. We acknowledge the progressive developments in key metros, including eThekwini, the positive offshoots in the city of Johannesburg, and the commendable work being undertaken in Tshwane. These gains demonstrate that where there is discipline, accountability, and collective leadership, our people experience real and tangible improvements in their daily lives. In preparation for the 2026 local elections, the ANC has empowered the Electoral Committee in line with the 54th and 55th conference resolutions to ensure that only ethical, capable, and people-centered cadres are nominated as candidates. The through the eye of the needle principles remain the yardstick. Leadership is not an entitlement but a revolutionary responsibility. Councillors and candidates must be visible, accountable, and rooted in their communities, leading with humility and competence. Only the Electoral Committee is mandated to communicate publicly on mandate and selection of candidates, ensuring coherence, integrity, and a revolutionary discipline. We wish to reiterate, to this extent, the ANC will convene a special National Executive Committee meeting next week to deal with matters related to local government. And that meeting will be characterized as a meeting to focus on ANC implementing intervention programs in the different municipalities throughout the country. To that extent, we will convene what we call roll call of all public representatives post the meeting of the National Executive Committee to give marching orders on what the National Executive Committee will have adopted as a program for intervention in local municipalities. The meeting of the Special Executive Committee and the roll call will mean that the ANC will implement an action plan, consolidate its grip, and address the weaknesses that are there in local municipalities. The ANC reaffirms its commitment to the 2018 NEC Communications Protocol. The ANC speaks with one voice. The President is the policy face of the organization. The Secretary General is the chief spokesperson, and the national spokesperson is the official media line. Public contradictions, unauthorized statements, and social media misconduct are acts of defiance, not freedom, and will attract consequences. Revolutionary discipline remains the lifeblood of our unity. And some among us, when they vulgarize this line of march, they say we suppress debate in the ANC. The ANC, 113th oldest liberation movement in the continent, prides itself of values of disciplined political dissent within. The ANC prides itself of revolutionary morality. The ANC prides itself of democratic centralism. And what does that mean? It means that once the highest structures have pronounced in between conferences, which is the National Executive Committee, those decisions stand and they must be defended by all, more especially those who serve in the structures that take those decisions. And we are very much encouraged and elated by the discipline our ground forces have maintained in this regard. Not that they don't have views or divergent views, but they've understood that the center holds. Since we came into office in 2022, all the ill discipline in the organization that you used to witness, except there are sporadic features of that in certain provinces, of which we have seen the lax leadership of the ANC in certain provinces where action has not been taken on acts of ill discipline, especially towards regional conferences. But over and above that, members of the ANC have maintained the line. Not that they agree with the decisions that have been taken by the NEC, but they've understood that the movement is engulfed in a difficult moment, especially post the 2024 national elections, where we realized the decrease of the ANC in terms of percentage in the national election. And the members of the ANC and leaders of the ANC have maintained the discipline and understood and accepted the direction from the upper structures of the organization. The National Executive Committee recently have re-emphasized that the Secretary General's office must act decisively against ill discipline in the organization. Ill discipline, if it is perpetuated at the national level, that's where we must start as an organization. Members of the organization have maintained discipline and have also voiced their divergent views in the different platforms where they can. That is why we will engage with members of the organization in the biggest political school towards the General Council on the discussions that shape the strategic way forward for the African National Congress towards the National General Council and beyond. The upcoming National General Council represents a midterm review anchored in the strategy and tactics document and inspired by the Freedom Charter. The NGC will confront the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality and propose bold steps for the fourth decade of freedom. The base document, rooted in resolutions of the 55th conference, calls for societal renewal by putting people at the center of development, organizational renewal through cadre development, political education, and ethical leadership, ideological renewal to restore the ANC's moral authority and reclaim trust, defining South Africa's future in progressive, people-centered terms. This discussion document will be launched this weekend in regional meetings and published in Umkhabulu, wider engagement in the structures of the organization. The ANC welcomes progress in African-led peace initiatives on the Russia-Ukraine conflict by our principles of non-alignment, peaceful resolution of disputes, and a progressive internationalism. We commend President Ramaphosa and the ANC subcommittee on international relations for advancing dialogue and positioning Africa as a force for peace. The ANC reaffirms that a lasting resolution requires global powers, including NATO and the EU, to place human dignity above external power struggles. South Africa, alongside fellow African nations, will continue to contribute to global peace and justice in line with ANC internationalist traditions. We take this moment to extend our deepest and most heartfelt condolences to the families, friends, and loved ones of all South Africans who have recently lost their lives, including Ambassador Mninwa Mahlangu, John Piper, Nomvula Rosalind Mabona, and Mama Nandi Nyembe. Their passing is a profound loss not only to their families, but also to the broader community. And we join the nation in mourning their lives while honoring the legacies they leave behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SG, for that statement. And I'm going to quickly turn to you, colleagues, foreign engagement, Structure, SABC, newsroom. Samkele Masego from the SABC. Mr. Mbalula. Samkele Masego from the SABC. Mr. Mbalula, two questions. First and foremost, on the issues pertaining to the national dialogue, the supposed perceived standoff that is there between former President Mbeki and President Ramaphosa, that particular seemingly standoff where it may be perceived as if the former president is undermining the current sitting head of state for him not to be part of a national dialogue that ultimately speaks about his administration and previous administrations. What would you recall or characterize this particular standoff between these two gentlemen who are, one is an ex-official member of your NEC and one who's an NEC member currently? Your national chairperson, Kwere Mantashe, characterized it as someone who's failing to let go of the handle whilst he's no longer in power. Then secondly, on the regional conferences, what's the update on the report of the team that was set up to investigate the regional conferences that took place in Limpopo? What is the status of that report? Have you finalized it? What is the verdict on that particular report? Then lastly, on the issues pertaining to the geopolitics, particularly around President Ramaphosa, the United States, Russia, Ukraine, what was the discussions centralized around with President Vladimir Putin and the EU leaders that President Ramaphosa spoke to last week after getting that report back from President Putin? Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's take it to Newsroom.
Zineko Mhlaba from Newsroom Africa. SG, what's your response to public critics made by some members of society and indirectly made by some ANC senior leaders regarding the fact that, or accusing President Ramaphosa of not having capacity to provide leadership to the country under the current circumstances the country is facing? We've heard of the ANC statements, describing a very bad the ANC, saying that it's in a dire state. And I want to know, are there any steps which have been of Senzo Mchunu, Naledi Pando within the organization? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will then go to you.
Thank you, Khawalo Magolego from UFM. Just to take forward Zinyoko's question, to be more explicit, how's the ANC reacting to the comments of the former International Affairs Minister, Naledi Pando? It sounded to me that she was saying that it appears that those who are in charge today are asking the public as this to happen instead of providing. And on the the SG, what is your assessment of what happened, especially with the convention itself? At face value, it looked like a complete chaos, disorganized. The second and third day, the hall was completely empty, apparently after people heard that they were not going to be paid for being participants there. Just your reflection on that one. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. My name is Lunga. I'm from the Mail and Guardian. You spoke now, Secretary General, that you are denouncing what the polls are saying. Would you maybe take us to a point where you can then tell us to say what are the internal polls of the ANC saying? And I'm raising this because of you saying that the ANC is not losing support, but society in general is not really voting. That's why then you find the ANC is not getting as much support. And secondly, when you came in as a Secretary General, you had made it clear that there would not be an issue of a Casey and Giorgio in the ANC, and the center will hold. Do you feel that there's members, especially senior leaders, who are ill-disciplined and are not allowing you to have that center that holds? And the other one would be, I don't know if this has gotten to you, Secretary General, but what I understand is that the EFF and PA are at a standoff for the MMC for transport position in Johannesburg, and both of them are saying they will walk away if the ANC does them that position. Are you aware of this, and how a threat is it to the government in here in Johannesburg? And lastly, the issue of, I think Samkelo raised it, of Limpopo. What I've heard, or the letter that I saw, that there would not be any conferences that would convene without them getting a quiet from you. So what I want to know, with the three that have taken place, especially the Polokwane one, I think Vembe, I'm not sure, not sure the other one, the third one, which have all of them have disputes. How far is that report to say, do you allow members to go and challenge it in court, or are you going to then say, okay, let's have a rerun of that conference? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will I take you to?
Yeah.
Not to, I'll take back to with your sorry, SG, UFM again, a follow-up question.
Yeah, I just left out the question. An update on the intention to reset the GNU button. Which parties have you met with in that regard? And are you managing to convince that those that are already within the coalition? Because we've seen, I think, about 3 of them saying they are opposed to the idea. That is the DA, Rise Mzansi, and Musi Maimani. Whether you've also tried to sell the idea to them, because it seemed like they only learned about it when you had the previous briefing downstairs. And yeah,
That would be it for now. Over to USG.
No, thank you very much for the questions. SABC national dialogue and the standoff between President Mbeki and President Ramaphosa, and the remarks that were made. First, as the ANC, we don't understand, we have not understood the withdrawal from the convention of the foundations as a standoff between the former president and the current president. There are issues that have been raised by the foundations that that did not participate in the convention, and we believe that those issues are being attended to, and they must be engaged. President Mbeki is among the architects of the idea of the dialogue long before the elections and after. And he sits in our NEC, and he has made his views very clear in relation to how we must, as an ANC, first and foremost, characterize and define our relationship with the dialogue. And fundamental to that, which we agree with him, is that this dialogue is a dialogue of South Africa and led by the citizenry, and it's not ANC-led or any political party for that matter. So we agree with him with regard to that. And if there are issues of misunderstanding in the convening, we believe that those issues can be resolved. And we are encouraged by the developments that the EPG, Eminent Persons Group, has been engaging. And it looks like they will find each other. And we welcome that. As much as critics of the dialogue saw that as a spin-off, the non-participation of the foundations, we viewed that as an important step in relation to engaging in robust discussion and shaping up a dialogue that will benefit all. And those matters are being attended to. So every time President Mbeki has got a different view or raises his views about the discourse, we should understand them as views in the discourse which are constructive. And the ANC, whether he raised them inside the ANC or outside, we're fortunate to have somebody like him, that these are matters that are important, that must be engaged. And we are encouraged by the fact that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that those issues will be sorted out that have been raised. We established a task team for Limpopo to address, to understand the concerns that have been raised by members of the ANC in the regional conferences. And those conferences are three. It was Bembe, it was Mopani, and it was Peter Mchunu. So the task team was engaging with the issues that have been raised by members of the ANC. We do have checks and balances in the organization, and a conflict resolution mechanism that we have set in place, which are independent. So the task team will look into that, into those issues that members have raised. They will also look into the internal organizational processes that we have set in place with regard to what members of the ANC coming from those conferences have actually raised. But the conflict mechanism that is there, PDRC, NDRC, and DRCA have kicked in, have done their job, conferences have taken place. And the task team will look into what members have raised post the conference. But the conferences have set and have taken place, and they are not under review, unless the task team in its report says that there are fundamental issues and errors that require rerun. When we established the task team, we made it very clear that we are attending to the concerns that members have raised, and the task team will come back with the report. The task team have finalized its job, and it has presented, they will present their report to the Secretary General, of which the SG will present the report to the officials and the NWC. And thereafter, we will brief the structures of the outcome of that task team report. And that's what is going to happen. But the conferences went well, in a nutshell. Of course, there are issues that members of the ANC have raised in relation to that. So over and above our processes, we then had this task team to look at those matters. They will look at all of the issues that members have raised and give a report on the outcome and so on. Vladimir Putin, we defer to government. So we don't want to deal with matters that government is handling quite efficiently at the level of the president and Lamula as our Minister of DERCO. And I think those are matters of government leading in relation to our foreign policy. We are encouraged by the fact that as the ANC, non-interference, support peaceful coexistence among nations, which is the policy that our government is actually advancing in terms of engaging with this situation. That's what we support in this regard. And we think that, which is what we have reflected in our statement, that the president and our government is doing a great and a very important work in relation to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So as for what Vladimir Putin, President Putin, is saying in terms of his engagement with EU leaders and President Ramaphosa, I think Vincent Magwanya and government can respond to that. I'm not their spokesperson. I can only relate to the matter if ever it veers from our beliefs as the ANC in relation to matters of international relations. Newsroom, Ramaphosa failing to provide leadership. You must always analyze the quarters of people who say the president is failing to provide leadership. First and immediate will be our strategic opponents. Now, when you are an opponent, it's very easy to criticize. Your role is opposition. You are not in the inside where things are happening. It's understandable. It's most welcome. And then secondly, you've got the national debate and the national discourse, plurality of ideas. Our society is robust in its very nature in terms of ideas and thinking. And so the attitude of us in relation to society broadly will be what is constructive that need to be observed, that comes from this plurality of ideas, divergent views about this criticism. Now, you listen to criticism, sometimes you don't get as to what is this criticism from sections of our society about the president, which not all, even future president, even if the president may not come from the ANC, will not be loved by everyone. But let's look at what are the fundamentals. This country confronted, when Ramaphosa came in, economic meltdown, big corruption, projected even till today in the public discourse. And then whilst we're dealing with economic recession, global recession, and all of that that affected us, we then had to concur with COVID-19. Now, the question is, how did Ramaphosa's administration, when he came in, dealt with those issues? Of course, first, we will admit that we are not making headways in terms of the economy, which is key, because the economy must create jobs. The economy must do a whole lot of things in order to cushion its citizens. Not everybody wants to be on social security net. People want to work. And then government has got to create these opportunities working with everybody to create jobs. So we must admit that we've got to accelerate on the question of industrialization as part and parcel of our interventions in the economy. We agreed that must happen. And that agenda must be felt by everybody. We have seen industries disinvesting in our country and all of that at the moment when we thought they will actually come in numbers and invest in our economy. Will you say the president, the 7th administration is failing in that? They are not doing anything about it. I think the critical question is to what extent our social compact, private sector, business and labor, is actually finding expression in the industries to create jobs for our people. And that is what government must roll up their sleeves, all hands on deck to actually accelerate. What have we done with regard to the fight against corruption? We have done a lot. And an account is being given. You might not see people in red overalls, but billions and billions of rands have been recovered. Assets have been freezed of those who are implicated in corruption. Of course, South Africans want to see prominent kingpins implicated in corruption behind the bars. And that's one aspect that means strengthening of institutions of the state which have been eroded over time remains critical in terms of this work. NPA, the Hawks, and all of that need to be strengthened and supported in this fight against corruption. Criminal elements who are implicated in corruption and all of that are sophisticated. You can't have a state that does not have a capacity to bring them to book. And that is why in the reshaping of institutions that have been eroded over time, bringing back scorpions not in name have actually been effected by government. COVID-19, we have always said that the effects of that will see them in the long term, and we are grappling with that. If you go to Sandton now, and then you look at the shops there that have closed down, just in Sandton, if you walk around there, since COVID-19, they've not come back. And the biggest hotel, Michelangelo, and all of that is still closed. It's since closed since COVID-19. So we have said that the ripple effect of that, we'll see it in the long term. But there are positive spin-offs that we see in terms of the economy, in terms of the social compact, that are going to bring back these industries and ensure that there is boom again in the economy. Unless we are able to answer that question and answer it convincingly, otherwise everything else will just become a paper, a resolution. So we need to address that, and government and the president leading from the front are focused on that particular point. Building social cohesion in society and all of that, that program continues in our country under the leadership of the president and the 7th administration. And of course, we are now in the 7th administration under a government of national unity. And we need to address all the challenges, understanding very well that we are not alone in government. We are with others, with divergent and different views in government from what we're pursuing and what we're pursuing as the African National Congress. Coming to the question, and the leadership of the president and of government will always be under scrutiny at all times. it will not only end with one answer in terms of the leadership of the president. It will always be under scrutiny in terms of the good work that government does going forward, and that will reflect on the president and so on. So that work is continuing, whether good or bad, but the scrutiny of leadership of the country, that will always be done. Even if leadership is doing good work, there will be those who say we don't see what is happening in our country. Whereas there is a lot of work that is being undertaken, including in the fight against corruption in South Africa. Steps against Senzo, Malusi, and I don't know why you add Naledi Pando, because I think you are just distorting what Sis Naledi was saying yesterday. Sis Naledi was reinforcing ANC policy in a public platform, talking about the values of what is expected from ANC members. In the platform where she was talking about Istwalandwe, Umamu Gertrude Shope. So she couldn't have said anything other than what she had to say there, which was correct. That we need a new cadre of renewal, which is correct. What Mena Lady was saying there. So I read in the newspapers, they say no, Naledi must be disciplined. For what? Because she's saying the right things. That the leadership of the ANC and its veterans are expected to say and to remind us all the time that these things have got to happen. Not a leadership that says that you are failing. The leadership that says stay true to Gertrude Shope. For what Gertrude Shope stood for. That's what Mena Lady was saying. Unless Mahlengi can educate me better, that indeed Mena Lady deserves a reprimand. But I listened to her, and there's nothing to reprimand there. It's correct. It's what the ANC stand for, is what the ANC must do. Now, all other leaders of the ANC must reinforce the message of the ANC. And members of the ANC and leaders must speak to enhance the good standing of the ANC. Let's start with Naledi Pando. Gertrude Shope, celebration, 100 years of Mam Kate, our stalwart, Istwaland. Great remembrance. Women of the ANC and society are there. What are you going to say there? You are supposed to be reminded of this person, what she stood for, and what we need to do. Media was quick to counterpose and distort and use AI about what Mama Naledi was saying when he was talking about leaders and what is expected of leaders, and that leaders must provide answers, and then they must lead from the front. And then they said Ramaphosa. And whereas he was challenging the entire leadership of the ANC and say, we are supposed to provide answers to the people. Isn't it what is expected of us? That is correct. It is expected of us that we must provide answers to the people at all material times, starting from President Ramaphosa downwards, leading from the front. President Ramaphosa can't provide answers alone. He provides leadership from the answers that are given by the collective he leads with. And if President Ramaphosa come across as not giving answers, it's a reflection on our collective as a leadership. If anyone were to say that, it's a reflection on us as a leadership. And in this particular instance, to very complex issues that confront us as a movement today, it is important that the leadership must be agile, must be dynamic, and we can only do that through collective brain, not alone. Coming together and say, here is a problem of unemployment. How do we overcome that? And then if leadership have reached inertia in terms of thinking, ceiling, then it's a reflection on the common, it's a reflection on the leadership. So, Mama Naledi Pando did not veer anyhow from what is expected from her as a leader and a veteran of the ANC. She spoke like a veteran on the occasion that honored the veteran of the ANC. In my view, she was not even most quoted, she was distorted, to say the least. Because if you take a piece of something from what somebody says and then put it in a gossip column, you will not get the result. Look at it in its totality and the context of what this person was saying. I've listened to her. She said all the right things of what needs to be done. She was not critical of the ANC, the renewal project of the ANC. Now, if you are a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, the NEC takes a decision and say, GNU is a tactical maneuver and intervention. NEC, you are a member. And then the media says, you said this GNU you did not agree with. You don't want it. You don't want the DA. Who likes the DA? We don't like the DA. We don't like the GNU. But GNU is a tactical maneuver out of many other options on the table. And everybody, as we characterize it right from the onset, that it brings on board not necessarily people who agrees, but it brings on board people ideologically who are on the opposite, including the DA. All the political parties who are there are ideologically on the opposites. Majority of them are opponents of the ANC, including the DA, Freedom Front Plus, and all other parties that are there. Very few chose not to come in for their own reasons. But we have said as the ANC, GNU is not a strategic end, it's a tactical maneuver. It means at some point it will come to an end. If it comes to an end, the GNU, because others decide to withdraw, all of them, and leave the GNU, that will be fine. But GNU, from where we stand, will come to an end because the masses will define what must happen for this country. And the ANC chose the path of the GNU. Now, that is a decision of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, that all members of the NEC are bound by it, and members of the ANC are bound by it, even those who don't agree with it. Like I explained to you earlier on, that we had many options on the table in terms of government of national unity. We had minority government, we had an option of an election. We had co-governance between two political parties and all of that. But we chose GNU for everybody to come and participate. So in this particular instance, it is a position of the ANC, unless it is reviewed by the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. We don't have dissent in the organization around that. We do. There are members of the ANC who said, no, we don't understand. That's why, as the national leadership, we went to the ground and explained to members of the ANC why we took that decision as the African National Congress. in the moment that we are in as an organization. So members of the National Executive Committee have got a burden unto themselves to explain this difficult decision of the organization. In 1990, the ANC goes to Groote and meet with the apartheid regime and pronounce on the Groote Minute. And Chris Hani is in Transkei, confined there by the apartheid regime and all of that. And then well looked after there by General Olomisa. And then he wake up as a leader of the ANC. Here is Mandela and the rest of the leadership with the de Klerk and so on. Chris Hani says, when he speaks to us, that when he saw that, he was aggrieved. He started to remember many comrades who perished in the camps and died as members of Umkhonto weSizwe. And here the ANC card, the armed struggle is suspended. It was even before the Groote Minute, I think. And then here the ANC leadership announces that the armed struggle is suspended. But Chris Hani says, as a disciplined member of the ANC, I had to abide by the decision that I was uncomfortable with. Okay? That decision was uncomfortable. Chris Hani says that the chief of staff of Umkhonto weSizwe, executive of the ANC, secretary of the South African Communist Party. Now, the ANC arrives at the in 2024 and then achieves 40%. How do you govern with 40%? Are you going to reset the start the elections and do all of those things? The organization says, no, we don't go for grand coalition, we go for GNU, which must actually take us over the line and defend the National Democratic Revolution. Now, leave the title. Let's look at the GNU and the NDR today. Has the NDR been suffocated by GNU? To a certain extent, yes. It has suffered a setback because we can no longer take decisions that we wanted to take to accelerate transformation on our own. Even passing the budget, you could see. Whether you like it or not, you can't pass it on your own. It has to happen with others, the greater participation of others. But the ANC has been able to do things that affirm the National Democratic Revolution. Somebody writes on social media and say, I don't understand how this becomes a sellout position when this government have implemented NHI, have implemented Bella Bill, and is going on, and then expropriation. Why we are hated today by sections of our society, and if you look at those sections, are people who are anti-transformation. And under the government of national unity, the ANC with its 40% have held on to the acceleration of transformation, which we call the National Democratic Revolution in South Africa. So where is the sellout position there? Let's not debate what is black or white in the GNU in terms of what is the DA and everybody else. Let's debate where are we failing to advance the NDR. Of course, we've got, and we must fight back from this 40% going forward. So I'm saying to you, there's no discipline. There's nobody who's been disciplined. People have been reminded and have been reprimanded. There's no discipline. If we take a person to a discipline, is when we take Makura, and then we put a sticker of fake news, and Makura himself did that. Now, if I am Mbalula, I go to Lunga, he interviews me at Mail and Guardian and distort me. Like somebody distorted me and said that I said ANC will be 30%. The onus is on me. The onus is on me and the publication to clarify that I was distorted. I went to a publication here, TV, and then after I've left, they said I attacked General Mkhwanazi. And then somebody on Twitter insulted me based on that. And then I clarified that I didn't. I said what Mkhwanazi is raising borders on lawlessness for the country and a banana republic, and it must be investigated. Not Mkhwanazi. Maybe English, we don't understand it properly, all of us. But that's what I said. I said that the things that he's talking about suggest lawlessness and borders on us being a banana republic, and that must be investigated. And then somebody said Mbalula is attacking Mkhwanazi. He says that Mkhwanazi, Mkhwanazi is promoting banana republic and everything. And that was clarified. I was interviewed, not Mahlenge, me. I've got a responsibility with the publication to clarify that matter. So I cannot clarify matters of NEC members and their statements in secret. They must, if you are misquoted by a newspaper, write a statement and say, Lunga, SAPC, you misquoted me. And that is why I am defending Naledi Pandor here today, because she said all the right things on behalf of the ANC. As a veteran, I'm very proud about what she said. That's what all leaders and veterans of the ANC must continue to say, especially on platforms like those. If you tell us as a movement, for instance, which you are on the platform of Mama Katie, you've got to say the truth and constructively. And that is what it is. And that is the renewal program of the African National Congress. But you can't be an independent member of the National Executive Committee. And members of the NEC said, we must deal with that particular matter. UFM, I've clarified the issue of Naledi Pandor. Reset on the GNU button. We are going to reset the GNU button. We are mandated by the NEC to do that. We are going to engage with our partners in the GNU about resetting the button. We said we are going to do that post budget. We have not done that. We are going to engage on that. We've got to revisit the statement of intent and a whole lot of other issues. So in the next 2 weeks, we are going to be engaged in intense discussions. We don't have a GNU with one party. You can have ANC and maybe followed by DA and others, but we've got a GNU of 10 political parties. And that's where we are going. And then we will also engage with those who are not part of the GNU. And that's what is important for us. But resetting the button means talking to everyone. Mail and Guardian, polls. We are not arguing with polls. But if, as newspapers, you take a DA poll and then you call it a DA poll, and then you say the DA says no, Paul says this, and I saw Helen Zille was saying that that is inaccurate. That's what we are attacking, not polls. And we simply define the fact that other polls, we know where they are embedded. They are not as innocent as they are. You know, they come from different think tanks. It's like going to university, you are taught by a professor who believes in neoliberalism. Enable us to see what is neoliberal, what is left, and all of that. And me, I subscribe to this. And some of these policies and ideologies have failed elsewhere. And in this particular instance, we had to go back and reset the button to say what is the best going forward. Even countries have evolved and so on and so on. So we need to understand that polls, Lunga, are not as innocent as they come. But as the ANC, we reiterate the fact that we don't argue with polls. And what we are challenging is the DA poll that seeks to affirm themselves and promoted by the media as holier than thou. It's quite interesting that you wake up on a Sunday, a DA poll is in the front page of a newspaper, and then it says that the ANC will get 30%, and it comes from a particular stable. Isn't that interesting? At least try to be clever. Don't be so blunt. You know, a reputable newspaper promoting a political party poll and say to society, ANC will get 30%. What's that? Where is your non-partisanship? Anisakwazi nozibamba. Siyayazi anisifuni. You want us to go down. But the fact of the matter is that you are now becoming blunt and you are frustrated, actually, that this ANC is still around. Okay? We will fight for our position. It's not a given that the ANC will stay at 40%, it will not go down, or and all of that. We know as the ANC, it's not a given. We've got to work for our people and harder. And that is why we are even hard on ourselves, even about our own behavior. By our cadres who are going wayward, we are harder because we've got to come back. And that's why when others want to entertain things like leadership issues, we are harder on them, even on ourselves, because we know that we are being lured into a route that will actually put us on another level, not to focus on what we are facing with. There are people who don't see that the ANC is in a difficult moment, including some of, and others are doing it deliberately. They are right inside the ANC and they are doing it deliberately, and we are not going to allow that, at least as this leadership. So a newspaper says a political party will get 30%. It's not Ipsos, it's not SRF, it's not any of the research institutions out there. It's a political party. So will you, if I give you a poll, Lunga, you ask me, what does the ANC poll? We are starting from September. We'll be polling. Will you take my polling and put it on the front page of Mail and going down? So says the ANC polling. You wouldn't do that. You are not going to do it. Doing in simpler terms, you are promoting DA and in your newspapers, because ideologically in your newsrooms you have already taken a stand as to where do you stand, and that's why and it was no in your name, and then I want paper's name is a newspaper name, and then you just put it there, and then it's credible in the eyes of the voters. The ANC is going down. So says who? DA polling. it's not only unfair, but it's for the media to be partisan like that. We don't argue with institutions of research. We don't. We were told by Ipsos that we are going to lose metros. And then we kept on saying that, no, they are telling a lie. And indeed, we lost metros. So we are not in the business of arguing with research. We analyze research ourselves, actually weekly. This Monday, every time we meet, we look and the polling across all of that. We've got no gripe with research. We look at it, look at our own research. And that is why we are able to do certain things, because research of a particular story. And that is it. All what we are raising here is the fact that let us not shape the narrative unless you have surrendered your independence to become partisan and become mouthpiece of certain political parties. Unless you have surrendered. But from where we are still dealing with an independent press. That's what we are talking about, Lunga. Discipline. Look, the ANC discipline is owned by ANC members. We enforce it, but it's owned by its own members. And of the ANC have conducted themselves very well, as opposed to where we were some time back. Even though some may have issues with conferences and all of that, they've held back. They've acted with restraint in leadership. Because the public image has been affected by internal ANC. Research tells us that South Africans are tired of ANC infighting. And we have reduced that people of the ANC go to a BGM and miss each other in the BGM. It gives us a wrong image. It happens in Polokwane, recently in a conference. There was a few members of the ANC who fought there and then gave us a bad image. And you media covered that extensively. Point of view of discipline, because that's when we have to enforce party discipline. But discipline, how we understand it, political discipline, is that a member of the ANC embrace discipline. You must know, like an ordinary folk who go to a church like ZCC or Zion, no? That you don't have to tell them about discipline. Magafaki spell it. Definition of discipline, you already know that this person will not do the following practices. The same as in the party like ours, the ANC. an ANC member, I was talking to somebody who's an ANC member, who marched in front of council offices and insulted ANC councillors who are his comrades, and a horrible, horrible swearing, right? And there was another one who was a lot of money with our t-shirt and then dancing like this. And then when I asked him, he said, no, he got the money from the casino. He was just having fun. I said, but an ANC member with the t-shirt, and that t-shirt went viral. I mean, that video of an ANC member with a t-shirt and a lot of, you know, almost like these chaps, bama taxi, abajayiva ngemali, and bayayisebenzela bona ke imali yabo because le ma taxi yena siyazi uthi le mchini. So that's the image of the ANC.